ask you just first about this call to your fellow governors around the country. What are you asking them to do here to support you?
Well, let's start with we should stand as one against the idea that Donald Trump has the ability to call up our National Guard against our will. I want to remind you that just last year, Joe Biden tried to call up National Guard, federalize them, to take Air National Guard and move them into the Space Force. And all 50 governors signed onto a letter, including, I might add, Greg Abbott from Texas, saying that it was improper for the President of the United States to call on governors to either send their National Guard or to federalize the National Guard so that the president could use them however he wanted to. Now, this year, of course, Greg Abbott is a tool of Donald Trump. He's his lackey. And he is, in fact, doing exactly what Donald Trump wants and going against exactly what Greg Abbott said he would do last year. So this is a problem. The National Governors Association, under Governor Stitt from Oklahoma, who's chair, seems unwilling to stand with the rest of us governors, Governor Kotek, Governor Newsom, and others, to prevent Trump from taking our National Guard, federalizing them, and then using them either against us or against other states.
Today, you sued to try to get a federal judge to block that deployment. It seems like we're going to have what will amount to a substantive hearing on that matter on Thursday, but here it is Monday night. It seems like in the meantime, there is reporting that some 200 Texas National Guard members are expected to fly to Chicago on military aircraft tonight. I know this is a very short-term question, but what is your plan in the short term for this interim period where you may have federalized National Guard troops on the ground before the court has actually ruled?
Well, the judge did warn the federal lawyers that if, in fact, they brought those National Guard and put them on the streets, that would be a really bad idea because there may be a ruling against them in just a couple of days. And I might add that if they do deploy them to the streets and then they are ruled against, I mean, how embarrassing to have to turn tail and run back to Texas 2 days after you've arrived in Chicago. So we'll see what they do. It would be improper for them to be deployed before there is a ruling, and we think that there will be a ruling on Thursday.
Governor, let me just ask you the big picture question here, which is that you have described, and we have seen in open reporting and on social media and even in exhibits filed with other people's lawsuits against these actions by the Trump administration, we have seen tactics against the people of Chicago that look very much like military tactics. Using Black Hawk helicopters, the apartment building that they ransacked, broke down all the doors, took all of the residents out of, the way that they've behaved on the street, using military-style vehicles and weapons in the faces of people on the streets of Chicago. That's before troops get there. And now Trump is saying that he wants to escalate further and put actual troops there. What do you think the goal is here? What do you think the risk is here to the country? And how do you think this is going to end?
Well, the broader goal, I believe, is the militarization of major American cities before the 2026 elections. Let me be clear about what's going on the streets of Chicago. They have dressed ICE and CBP in fatigues, put them in military gear, including with automatic weapons, and had them marching up and down major streets in downtown Chicago. It's a signal that they're trying to send that it's okay to have troops on your street, that this would be a welcome thing for people who live in Chicago. Nobody here welcomes it, by the way. I mean, literally, as they're walking down the street, people are yelling at them. But they think they can get people used to the idea. And next year, I fear that what they're going to do is deploy these folks eventually to polling places and say they're protecting the vote. Donald Trump knows that without shenanigans and without these breaches of the Constitution, that he's going to lose the Congress. And if he loses, he's going to immediately, in the aftermath of the election, do what he said he might do in 2020, which is use the military to confiscate the ballot boxes and count the votes, claiming that there's fraud. Remember, he's called up all 50 states' election data to the Department of Justice because they want to review all 50 states for fraud. And they won't tell you exactly what they're going to do, but I fear that these are all connected. And this militarization, even without National Guard or military troops on the ground, you're seeing ICE act like a militaristic organization. You're seeing CBP act like it. One more thing. CBP, I want to remind you, the Customs and Border Patrol, they're supposed to only operate within about 100 miles of a border. We're not anywhere near a border here in Chicago. So how can they operate here? Well, they're claiming that Lake Michigan, the shores of Lake Michigan in Chicago, those shores are the border of the United States. But Canada is an awful long way from here across Lake Michigan. So we know that they're using it again as a pretext.
Democrats fighting back against Trump. California Governor Gavin Newsom has joined that Oregon lawsuit over the National Guard that we reported on. Newsom, of course, brought the very first effort to stop Trump in court in this term. Indeed, he's now become a pretty leading national Democrat who makes an impact against Trump, the two trading barbs ever since.
This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president.
Where Gavin Newsom, who's really an incompetent governor.
It's Orwellian.
Look at the job he's doing in California. He's destroying one of our great states.
His mess, we're trying to clean it up.
He's an incompetent governor.
He's a failed president.
Boom, boom, boom. They clearly have burns for each other. And, you know, there's also this kind of long-standing artistic trope that when you get to that level of hatred, it gets obsessive, and therein it can get a little romantic even. Now, we tend to turn to lyrics around here, and I got to tell you, there are new Taylor Swift lyrics that channel this point because of an apparent rival. She says, it's actually sweet. All the time you've spent on me, it's actually romantic.
How does this get resolved? And if not, then can the government reopen without the president negotiating with and speaking to Democrats?
Well, good evening. Great to be with you all. We've made clear that we will sit down with anyone, anytime, any place, either here at the Capitol or back in the Oval Office, to reopen the government, to enact a spending bill that actually makes life better for the American people as opposed to hurting them, and that addresses the Republican health care crisis. At the same time, we've also made clear that we will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of everyday Americans. And Senate Democrats, once again, for the fifth time, demonstrated that today we're in lockstep in defense of protecting the health care of the American people and actually trying to reach an agreement that is designed to lift people up to address the cost of living crisis that exists in the United States of America, as opposed to continuing these failed Republican policies that are jamming up working class Americans all across the country.
So when the president says he's talking to Democrats, who's he talking to?
That's a really good question. I asked that question myself when I heard the comments, because he certainly is not talking to members of House Democratic leadership. I spoke to Leader Schumer earlier today. There's no communication between the White House and Senate leadership either. In fact, what we've seen is that Republicans have basically gone radio silent since the Oval Office meeting last Monday. And here in the House, where I'm present, Democrats are on duty, Republicans remain on vacation. It's extraordinary that for the second consecutive week, they've canceled votes because they'd rather shut down the government than actually provide health care to the American people.
Mr. Leader, you know, I'll just say the quiet part out loud. He's not talking to anybody. Those are just words because, you know, Republicans aren't going to move unless he says so on these issues. That's why the Capitol's locked. It was locked last week. It is locked tonight. And the reality is you've offered an opportunity to have a conversation. You say, hey, OK, let's debate what this is. Let's debate the health care challenges that we have. I want you to listen, if you could, to Mr. Johnson's response to your challenge to a House floor debate.
When the poll says that that about 13% of the people approve of your messaging, then you make desperate pleas for attention, and that's what Hakeem Jeffries has done. We passed the bill in bipartisan fashion and sent it over to the Senate. The House has done its job. I'm not going to let Hakeem try to pretend for these theatrics. I mean, this is a Chuck Schumer decision. The ball is in the Senate's court now. The House has done this. We don't need to waste time on that nonsense. Those debates have been had. Colleague's a friend. I mean, Hakeem is a friend and a colleague. I respect him, but we all know what he's trying to do there.
So, sir, friendship and all that aside, the reality of it is the polls say 43% of the American people blame Mr. Speaker Johnson and the Republican Party. So you may say 13% don't like what you said, all right, or whatever. The reality of it is he locked the door for a reason, and he's kept the doors locked for a reason. So with that as the backdrop to all of this,
Democrats are fighting back. They're making huge moves, and they're trapping Trump because they're basically saying that we want you to call our bluff, or we called your bluff, and now it's time for you to respond. A little bit of both, honestly. They let the Republicans shut the country down. They did. Democrats didn't make the decision. That's a Republican shutdown. But unlike in the past, the recent past, and if you go back a long time, Democrats are not pulling the Republicans off the brink. You've seen it so many times, guys. Write in the comments if you've seen it. And not just at the national level, local level. Republicans want to do something utterly disastrous, right? And Democrats, as the party that is more responsible than the Republicans, I don't always agree with the Democrats because I'm much more left-wing than them, but they generally have a sense in the Democratic Party that they want things to operate semi-well. You know what I mean? They don't go specifically to destroy the country. There are some Republicans, not all but some, that specifically go to Washington to create carnage because that's what the constituents want in their hyper-red districts, or that's what the donors want, because when things are crazy, people are like, let's just privatize it all and hand all the power to corporations. And so the Democrats pulled them off the brink. And yes, they do sometimes stop harm, but they, in a sense, bail out the Republicans politically from the negative consequences of their own policies. That because the Republicans didn't give the voters what they want, because let's be clear, voters don't know that they don't want it yet, but they put the Republicans in charge. And if you actually let the Republicans govern, my God, it's going to be a mess. We've seen it, right? And so the Democrats are saying, look, we're fighting for health care. You can do your Trump shutdown. We're going to fight back. And we're also going to fight back against you at the local level. We are not an autocracy. The United States isn't an autocracy. That's what these guys are saying. Not only is the president not a king at the federal level, it's a federal government. There are states, and those governors have a lot of powers distinct from the president. There are certain things that a governor has total power over that a president has no power over, and vice versa, of course. But given that, these governors are saying, look, we're the last line of defense against Trumpism, and we're going to make that clear. That's a big deal, and I don't think Donald was ready for it.